All right. As the homeless crisis continues to grow in Saskatchewan, our first responders and community-based organizations seem to be the one left trying to mitigate the harms associated with unstable housing. With our province's lack of response in previous years, I thought asking Saskatoon's own Fire Chief of the Year, Morgan Hackl, to the studio to weigh in on what's happening out there. But before we bring him on, what's up, everybody? My name is Dan. This is Hard Knocks Talks, coming at you from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Treaty Number 6 territory, and the traditional homeland of the Métis people. Good morning, Morgan.
Good morning.
How are you on this brisk Friday morning?
I am well. Yes, it is brisk. I'm happy to be here, and just want to acknowledge the journey of reconciliation that we are all on, and being part of an inclusive community and all growing together. I'm proud to be a resident of Saskatoon.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you for coming today, and let's jump in.
You.
This is Hard Knocks Talks.
Okay, this episode is premier sponsored by Prairie Harm Reduction. Prairie Harm Reduction is dedicated to reducing stigma and improving capacity for community care. One of the ways they do this is by offering learning opportunities for professionals, businesses, and community groups. Training is available on several topics, including HIV, hepatitis C, harm reduction, engaging with people who use substances, and service navigation. To learn more, check out their website at www.prairiehr.ca or tap the link in the description below. So, when you first got started in this and you started engaging with people who were unhoused or struggling with substance use, what were your thoughts? Like, were you seeing judgment coming from yourself?
Yeah, I think what I should do is, in answering that question, just back it up prior to the work that we started. We started that proactive encampment work with the homeless in the fall of 2021. But prior to that, in 2017, I took part in a homeless challenge for Sanctum Care Group. And that was the first time, other than my time as a firefighter EMT on the street, that I really was immersed in starting to learn more about homelessness in our community. So when we started this work in 2021, I felt that there was much for SFD to be involved in. And with that, I had so much to learn. And so I wouldn't think of it as, I've tried never to judge people on where they're at in that moment. I've tried. Of course, we all can be better at times.
Yes.
But it was all about my learning ever since 2017 that has brought us to today.
Okay. So this was quite an eye-opening experience for you, even having had engaged with people living that lifestyle.
Yeah, I would say, it was very eye-opening. So as I started to become more engaged in this work, I started to spend time talking to those that are homeless, substance use disorders, mental health, that we are on the street and living out in the community. It really hit me at the core. Of course, we can all point fingers at the system, and that's the easy way to start.
Yeah.
But I knew fire needed to do more. So I spent a lot of time talking to people and trying to figure out what our role could be, and then collaborated with some of our staff in our executive team.
So we're seeing other provinces respond to public concern around homeless encampments by sending police in to evict their residents and just basically clear them away and throw them in the trash. Now, I like to believe that these community leaders aren't completely uneducated. What do you suppose their end game is in this strategy?
Yeah, so of course I can't answer for other communities. When we look at what has occurred right across Canada, it's homelessness is everywhere, of course. It's across North America. It's a major problem for communities right now. If you look at the civic survey that the residents of Saskatoon just completed for 2023, homelessness is the number one priority for the community, for the residents.
Mm-hmm.
That was never even on the radar before in a civic survey.
Mm.
With that, in terms of other communities and the way they've approached things, I would say that in Saskatoon, especially for the fire service, we have some different levers. We have bylaws underneath Saskatoon Fire that allow us to be more proactive and approach things in a more supportive way. I believe we have been, there's been so many organizations doing great work and right across the community. Has it been as coordinated as it could be? Probably not. My roundabout answer here is we have been doing things differently for a longer period of time, I believe, in Saskatoon. And in terms of, say, a community being more proactive, going in with police, I think that's been more of a reactionary approach to it. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Whereas we've had a lot of collaboration through all the relationships we have across the community with community-based organizations. Between police and fire, for example, I could talk about that for a half hour about the work that we do with them, the collaboration. But I think because we have all those relationships, we're a right-sized city in terms of having those relationships. We're not a Vancouver. We're not a Toronto. We've had more ability to be more supportive in relationships and trust for a longer period of time in advance of this. And so the approaches I've seen in other cities, I don't agree. I don't believe that was the best approach. And I believe what we've done here is a more supportive approach.
Yeah, and even having them go as far as to call them a street sweep. You know, that's...
Well, you could say that's what it is. That is what has occurred in other communities, for sure. When we think of encampments, we look at the fall of 2021. Regina had Camp Hope, Camp Marjorie, Camp Hope. We looked at that, SFD, myself and our Assistant Chief of Community Risk Reduction. We had meetings with Saskatoon Police. We determined that we did not want that to happen here. We saw what was happening across the country. Encampments are a place for crime, violence, predatory behavior, of course, lots of drug activity, unsafe living conditions, fires.
Yeah.
Encampment fires occur. We have the data of how our encampment fires have increased. So we strongly believed we needed to be more proactive and not take that approach of you say like a sweep and figure out how we can ensure that those encampments never form.
So as housing costs soar, are you starting to see a more diverse population in these encampments?
Yeah, I would say across our community, the people who are unhoused is quickly changing in terms of demographics. There is more younger people for sure, which is very concerning to me. There's more women that we are having interactions with, where we try to support them on the streets than ever before. And with that, the numbers are for sure increasing.
Now, I'm interested to know how that conversation went. Let's take a step back for a moment. And you said in 2021, the encampment challenges in Regina resulted in them taking action, and you sat down with the police and said, we don't want to do that. Now, was that a hard conversation? Like, did the police want to follow suit with Regina?
Yeah, for sure not. The police don't support that kind of approach as well. So we both agreed that we would rather figure out proactive way to approach things
Mm-hmm.
and how we would move forward. So what we did is we set up through our relationships. We had commitment from police, from social services, from a few of the mobile outreach groups, and we set up a task force, if required, to go out and look to support those that are homeless.
Mm.
What we ended up doing actually is we never fully engaged those teams. And so what Fire started doing in the fall of 2021 was, with two of our bylaw inspectors, going out and forming a relationship with those that are unhoused, gaining people's trust,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to connect people to services. There was times we called in police, and there was times we called in income assistance or others. But for the most part, Fire has been doing this work now since the fall of 2021.
Mm. Why were you calling in police?
Well, when we would call in police if we felt it was unsafe for our staff.
Okay.
So it wasn't to, for example, in another community where you see a dispersal or a sweep of an encampment,
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't the case. It was when we felt that there was some unsafe conditions that we would be entering into. We would have that first contact with some of those that are homeless, whether it was one person or a few.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would determine, do we need to step back and have police come with us?
Mm-hmm.
Or is the relationship, the trust there that we can do the work just SFD?
Mm-hmm. Is there times where you call the police in, not necessarily to engage, but just to be present?
Yeah, we have done that. So, and some of those times have been where they will just stay at a distance, and they are there to support our staff doing the work, this
Mhm.
important work,
Mm-hmm.
and they're also there for safety of those that are unhoused. But for them, I would say with certainty, almost every time they're there in a supportive way,
Mm-hmm.
and
And-
they're to just make sure everything goes
Their
safely.
presence is
The presence helps.
it fulfills
for sure.
the need.
Fulfills the need.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, this encampment work that we've done proactively, if we look at a full year like 2022, so we started in the fall of 21. In 2022, we had 512 interactions with those that are unhoused out in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2023, to date, we're over 850 interactions now.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to double what we did in 2022.
How many of those engagements resulted in engagement with police?
Well, sorry, I don't have that number, but the number would be very low,
Yeah.
very low.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a few times where we've worked with individuals that are unhoused to remove their belongings, to where we're connecting them to supports, where we've asked police to come,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a very low number. I could say with certainty it's below 10 times.
We're hearing concerns about that by improving the acceptability of these encampments, that we are at threat of normalizing that lifestyle in our communities. And I can see two thoughts into why people would have this concern. One being, if this becomes an acceptable way to deal with the unhoused, our leaders will stop working towards reducing the cost of living.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one that I'm seeing is, if living conditions are improved in these encampments, it will encourage people to live this way, as it is more affordable. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. When you speak to that, these are important conversations.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be different thought across the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
I actually can agree with points from all perspectives when I've had discussions with people in the community that
Mhm.
are at one place on the scale of all these thoughts. And so with that, if we look at some other cities where they have set up, say, washroom facilities, providing food, making sure, providing information about making sure shelters are safe in terms of fire safety, for example. I know
Mhm.
some cities have focused on that, is education campaigns to those that are unhoused.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the role of the fire service for the unhoused.
Mm-hmm.
I support all those. in terms of that it is a short-term solution, and it gives people dignity, where, human rights-based approach. I can understand all that, but I do believe that there is a better way to approach those things, and that I believe what we're doing in Saskatoon, and I can say this proudly, I think the approach we're taking is the right approach. We have different levels of government at the table in terms of how we approach things. When I talk about this proactive work, we work with income assistance workers to support us when required. We have police supporting us. We have health supporting us. And I believe that the best approach is to support those individuals that are unhoused, try to gain their form that relationship, gain their trust. And the important piece for all of us, everyone deserves safe and adequate housing. And from the fire department's perspective, a tent, a makeshift shelter, no matter how it's set up, with say a temporary washroom or a safe, somewhat safe. How is a heating source that's plugged in, or a fire, a safe heating source for someone? We believe safe and adequate housing is a home, is a traditional home. And so the best approach is to connect people to supports, have a relationship, gain their trust, and try to get them to accept support. When we do this proactive work, 40% of the time, people take some sort of support the first interaction. For the others that don't, it takes more visits, sometimes a second visit, sometimes 10. But we do end up 80% of the time after that, that people take some kind of support. Is that temporary housing? Maybe not. It might be food. It might be connection to get their ID. It might be transportation to a family or friend. All those things are important. And I believe that if we're going to normalize something, why wouldn't we normalize how we support people in a human rights-based approach? Kindness. Why wouldn't we normalize making sure that we form that relationship, making sure we gain their trust? To me, that's our way out of this. That's the solution. So I support what other cities have done in terms of those are pieces of giving people dignity. But I believe the human factor, the human rights-based approach, relationship trust, sorry, I'm repeating myself here.
Well, and we're going to touch
strong
on that.
For me. Is we need to approach things, and that's what you normalize, is how all of us in the community treat those that are unhoused.
Have you had challenges establishing relationships with people in these encampments? Like, where do you draw the line? Because some people are not happy to see someone in uniform.
For sure.
So how do you approach that?
Yeah, so that's with patience, for sure. So our staff do incredible work. They do incredible work. Our proactive team that goes out and forms a relationship and trust. So
do you go out in full uniform, or are there times where you
they
dial
are
back?
in uniform, but we have them, like in the summer months, they'll be in a t-shirt. It's not our normal fatigue shirt with the colors, the flashes on the shoulders. It'll be in a t-shirt. We try to downplay the uniform somewhat. We do feel the uniform is still important. And for the most part, we have the respect. The fire service does have the respect that those that are homeless. We do have challenges, for sure. So we've identified about 30 people in the community right now that the words complex needs can be defined in different ways. But there's about 30 people in the community right now that you could say have complex needs that we have a difficult time working with. They are not taking supports from us.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult for us to form trust with them, even though we continue to try.
Mm-hmm.
And, we feel we have a relationship with them. I would say that they probably feel they don't have a relationship with us.
Yeah.
But so it is patience. It is commitment. The time that I've spent out in the community talking with those that are unhoused,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that, and I'm in this uniform right here when I'm out on the street.
Mm-hmm.
I've been challenged a few times.
Like challenged,
like challenged, and I would say it's not with those that are unhoused.
Yeah.
I would assume that there is some connection to gang activity.
Okay.
That I'm being challenged, and they know I'm fire, but I trust that they're not going to hurt me,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not going to stop me from talking to the people that are unhoused in our community.
Let's take a quick break. If you are struggling with the substance use of a loved one or have tragically lost a loved one to drug-related harms, reach out to Stronger Together Canada peer-led support groups by Moms Stop the Harm and or Nar-Anon groups of Saskatchewan. If you are in search of private inpatient addictions treatment, check out Prairie Sky Recovery Centre located in Leipzig, Saskatchewan. To make contact or learn more about today's sponsors, check out our new merch, or if you want to show us some love and buy us a coffee, all of those links are in the description below. So this is a bit unscripted, but it came across my desk this morning, and I apologize, I forgot to mention it to you before the show, but hang on one second. I have a big dog, and we locked him out of the studio by accident, and he's unhappy about that. Give me one sec.
Okay. Do you want me to keep talking here? Just in terms of the hi there, Pooch.
No, we'll dive back in. That didn't take as long as I thought. So it's okay, everybody. Sue is now in the studio. He's happy.
There
He's
we go.
being petted by the chief.
That's right. There.
Well, let's carry on.
Yeah.
And I forget the man I saw on Facebook this morning. Someone sent me a link. They're talking about the complex needs shelter that is going to be established in the old liquor store on Idlewild.
1701 Idlewild Drive.
What
North.
an interesting location. What a huge shift from what it used to be. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so there as well, like, there could be a lot of different thoughts on that. We can talk about the location. Where is a perfect location for complex needs? This model that they're going to pilot, and the province has talked about that they're piloting this. Shelters as well, in terms of locations. In all the work that I've been involved in, it's very difficult to find the ideal location. And no matter where any location is discussed, there are always some challenges. And of course, there are once a location is established, for example, a shelter. When we had the Emergency Wellness Center shelter downtown, and now in Fairhaven, there's challenges with the community and the neighborhood.
There's always
around
pushback, and I get it.
I understand.
Yeah.
You can look at statistics, and yes, there are things that change in terms of what happens around a facility like that. There is. We can track it through our data. Police has the data. That's part of police and fire. We have a task force related to our work together to support the community around safety and well-being. And so it's something that is has the ability to adapt to different neighborhoods when there's changes. But there's challenges right now. And I can straight up, I don't have the solution in terms of an ideal location, a quick fix for some of these things. I do believe that the model that the province is piloting at that location, the model itself within those walls, is the right thing to do as one component of a really complex problem. I do believe that.
one thing this man was talking about on Facebook this morning was the concern around discharge. Now, he was talking about a 24-hour hold. Can you expand on that? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Like I said, this is unscripted, but
Yeah.
it sounds like public intoxication was one of the challenges that they were trying to mitigate with this complex needs shelter. And there was mention of a 24-hour hold. Now, what does that mean? They're going to see someone who's intoxicated in public and hold them for 24 hours and then just release them back to the public? Or what's going on there?
Yeah, so of course the operationalizing of that plan. Sorry, I couldn't get that word out.
It's okay.
It's I don't have all the detail on that.
Mm-hmm.
They're still working through that. The ministries, there's a number of ministries involved:
Mm-hmm.
justice, social services, health, mental health, and addictions. And so, in terms of how they're going to work during the 24 hours, I know they are going to have trained staff on site, and it's security, nurses, different types of support, addiction support. In terms of the discharge, there was lots of discussion at our council meeting and yesterday, and the province is still working through that. They are, but I believe, from what I heard yesterday, is the discharge will happen in numerous different ways. Like they would transport someone to another service or another shelter or housing, or that's a part of the discharge. The complete discharge plan was not released, but I do believe they have a plan. I know that every individual that goes in there, they're at that 24-hour mark. They're not going to open the door and
Punt them out.
no.
Yeah.
But it's going to be different for each individual.
Yeah.
And that's why I believe they didn't have the complete answer yesterday. I know that. There's lots of things for them to consider across the ministries. They are coming up with a plan around discharge and connecting people.
And I can't imagine it's going to be perfect right out the gate. And
that's a possibility.
Yeah.
And that's where, and I know police has done a lot of work on their own, but we'll be part of discussions too on the surrounding community. I know I spoke at council yesterday to the work that we've done around the lighthouse, around the wellness centers, both downtown and now at Fairhaven. We've had meetings with the Salvation Army around their shelter. There's things that we do coordinated with police, fire, other civic services like environmental, garbage. So we're going to coordinate it. Wait, will it be perfect? I can say with certainty we're going to have things to work through. But we are having, what I want people to know is we are having those discussions.
Yeah. We've got, and Carm, I apologize. I haven't said your name out loud before, so if I don't get it right, please forgive me. We've got Carm Michelenko from the Saskatoon Community Foundation.
Good morning, Carm.
Chat. Yeah. Thank you for being here this morning. Got a few comments. Carm says, your own commitment and patience is so admirable, Chief. She goes on to say, a commitment for full wraparound service could alleviate some of the justified concerns. And she also goes on to say, it's great to learn a full discharge plan will be put in place. Thank goodness.
Yeah, for sure.
So the Globe and Mail, and it's funny that this question came up, right? Because actually, Carm was the one that sent me this article a few days ago. So thank you for that, Carm. She said the Globe and Mail just released an article on how London, Ontario is handling their encampments. They are taking a compassionate approach by sending trained workers in to offer resources, education, even setting up portable washrooms, even clearing out trash or sharps or things like that. Even so far as setting up resource centers close to the encampments, doing things like limiting like 6 tents per encampment. What does the current plan look like in Saskatoon compared to what they're doing in London, Ontario?
Yeah, great. It's interesting. So London is one of the cities, there was 5 cities mentioned from the Canadian Human Rights Commission, the Advocate for Housing, that is doing this review of homeless encampments across Canada. And this is great that we're going to talk about London and ourselves, because we were both mentioned in the report. We had numerous meetings with the advocate for housing from the Human Rights Commission, and they valued the work we're doing here. So in terms of London, their approach is slightly different than ours. They are supporting in different ways. I'd say in terms of allowing encampments and then offering some supports, as you say, close by, is not the approach we've taken because of the Fire Safety Act, the Cities Act, and the bylaws that fall under SFD. We have property maintenance bylaws within the fire department that other fire services across Canada don't have. And that's related to safe and adequate housing. So that's everything from long grass and weeds in a yard, a junked vehicle, garbage, up to rodents in a home, infestation, and safe and adequate plumbing, heating. Those all fall under us.
Plumbing, really?
Yeah. So if we are called into a home, which might start as long grass and weeds, junked vehicle in a yard, and then we're drawn into the home through that property maintenance inspection, and someone didn't have safe and adequate plumbing, we would write, there would be an order to remedy for that.
Yeah.
So we see properties that in this community, and it's everywhere, of course, it's not just Saskatoon, but that I've used the word deplorable before.
Yeah.
They're not safe for someone to live in. And so that's why we've taken a different approach than, say, London or some of these other cities, is because we have these bylaws and safe and adequate housing. So once a building permit closes on a home and someone is living in it, we're the authority having jurisdiction around that house being safe and adequate to live in. So for us, encampments, not having running water, not having plumbing, not having a safe heating source, that's unsafe.
Yeah.
So that's why we haven't taken the approach of allowing, say, six tents in an area, and then providing washrooms and ensuring a safe heating source. I'm not sure it's safe, a plugged in heating source or a propane heater, but so that's why we've that's why we've been taken to a different approach and got to a different place here, and never had these pockets of encampments across our community.
So what is your approach then specifically?
Yeah, so the approach is that relationship and trust piece.
You keep coming back to that.
We're
relationships are important, man.
We're all humans.
Yeah.
And we all deserve dignity. And so to me, dignity is not supporting what we believe is unsafe living. We want to focus on trying to help the individual through relationship. We know we're not going to end this and like just win every time we have an interaction, but we're going to keep trying. And so with that, our approach is, as I've said over and over, going back and trying to connect people to supports. And then what we do is, if we've determined that we're not going to support these people living where they are anymore, we don't come in that day and come in with a trailer or dumpster and load everything up and see you later. We don't do that. It's back to that relationship. We talk with them. We post, we have a little document that we place on their tent or makeshift shelter if they're not there. We say we're going to come back. We work with them over the next day or two. And then we get them to a place where we both work together to take, so they take their important belongings, and we try to connect them to gain some temporary shelter. So, and make sure they're connected to, say, income assistance and other supports. Is that model perfect?
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are times that people do refuse
They just go off on their own.
and they go off on their own and they leave other than what, you know, they have determined is really important to them at that time.
Yeah.
And that's the piece I'm not, you know, what's the word? I'm not 100% comfortable or proud of.
Yeah.
But at that point, we do remove what is there.
Yeah.
But we have taken a lot of steps to try to work with the individual prior to that.
Mm-hmm. And comparing that to what they are, well, I don't know if they're currently doing it in Vancouver, but they have been doing it in recent months, is driving up and down the streets with a dump truck and a cop car and just clearing things out. Where are these people to go? You know what I mean? Like it's tough.
Yeah, it's tough. And so I can't answer exactly for how
them.
many of those people that they're connecting to services through that process.
Mhm.
Like I would hope that that's in place. But this concept of what we've developed here, I think is the right thing to do. Connected to that too is all the work we do with emergency management. So we help coordinate like the extreme weather strategies, cold weather strategy, warm weather strategy. We have our paramedics doing wellness checks, offering water in the summer, offering toques and mitts in the winter.
Going into the encampment?
Sorry, yes. Like what we
so
do
just
is
looking the other way at all of the infractions and just sort of here's things?
So what they do is if we get called out to check on somebody or medical call in the street, part of the paramedics' role, our fire paramedics, is to do a wellness check.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a proactive and reactive. It's both.
Mm-hmm.
But we're trying to support in a different way. Another component of that relationship with the fire department that we're trying to establish, that we're here to support you. And we're hoping if we have more of those interactions, that through that relationship that we can hopefully help them take a little step even, like, right?
Yeah, of course.
Or sometimes that connection to services or support, I know that, they might take support in that moment and then a day later, a week later, a month later, off they go again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, has there been success? I think there's been success.
Yeah, and that was my next question. Like, and maybe you don't have a statistic or whatever, but through these engagements, through what you just mentioned, putting the post on the tent and then saying, here, you can take what you need. We're going to have to remove this. Here's some resources. How many people have you actually seen move into those resources and find a safer house or safer housing or a better way to live?
Yeah, and so that end state, I don't have that number. I really don't. I know we have connected people. I know there's been some longer term housing, which is the goal, of course, for all of us in this. I can think of some individuals myself that I've formed relationships with where I first met them on the street and then I meet them in a shelter. They attain housing, they attain their supports. And I think, wow, success. 3 months later, 6 months later, I'm having a conversation again with them and they're back on the street or they're back at a shelter. Has that been a fail? Not in my eyes. Not in my eyes. We just have to get them back again to that.
And use the experience to learn, okay, where did things fall short?
Exactly.
Where did they go sideways? How can we bolster that area?
Exactly, because there's no model out there that a community has this figured out.
Yeah.
There isn't.
Yeah.
And so you're right. We need to continue to learn from that. And where there's gaps or where there's things we could have done differently, the complexity of this all, we just need to stay committed to it.
Do you think now? And I know you mentioned the barriers as to why your approach is different than London, Ontario's. Do you think the city will be so bold as to tackle these barriers as far as the bylaws and whatever standing in the way of being more compassionate, not unlike Ontario or London? Do you think that could happen here in Saskatoon?
So your question is like that we would change to be more like, say, London, Ontario?
To have the capacity to be
Capacity?
like London, Ontario.
Yeah. Well, I actually believe our model's better.
Hmm.
And I believe that we're as compassionate
Mm-hmm.
or more compassionate than other cities. And I guess that's arguable. That's debatable.
Unpack that.
But because it's back to the human factor.
Mm-hmm.
And we are so focused on the relationship and the connection to other services and like all our discussions with other levels of government, say Ministry of Social Services,
Mm-hmm.
with housing, income assistance, knowing that, there could be adjustments to the models that are out there for supporting. That's another topic too. But I believe focusing on the relationships with the individuals that are unhoused, connecting to them to the supports, and focusing on our relationships with other levels of government, like the province, to partner, to bring in income assistance to support these individuals. I believe, there's things that we're adjusting along the way, but I wouldn't change what we're doing right now.
Okay.
I wouldn't.
Okay. It sounds to me like a saying comes to mind. To me, it is important to meet people where they're at. Would you agree?
100%.
But it's also important to not necessarily leave them there.
Oh, 100% as well. So
Okay.
to meet them where they're at, that's an interesting thing. So for me, that's been some learning. I'm privileged. I grew up in Saskatoon in Brevard Park. I went to a high school there. I went to the U of S. I've had lots of opportunity, lots of people around me to give me the opportunities, right? So meeting people where they're at, that's been a growth for me for sure.
I was going to ask, have you ever found yourself drafting policy or swaying conversations in a way that was through the lens of your privilege, not considering the lived experience of what's actually going on out there? Like filling out a form, for example. Like for you, that's easy.
Oh, for sure. So there's things that I would say the work I've been doing since 2017 to try to better understand would show my commitment to trying to meet people where they're at. But the piece that I might still not have in its entirety is you talk about filling out a form. That's something I learned from doing the Sanctum Homeless Challenge twice.
Yeah.
Is all the challenges for those that are unhoused or have addictions, substance use disorders, mental health.
Yeah.
It's not set up right.
Yeah.
The system is not set up right. So with that, I still have things to learn for sure. And we try at SFD to, from that lens, like I know myself, our assistant chief, our EMO director, have all spent time trying to better understand. Do we have lived experience? Of course we don't. I can say with certainty we don't. But are we trying to meet people where they're at? I believe we are. We have a very compassionate fire service.
Got some comments coming in from my dear old mother.
Great.
Thanks for joining us this morning, Brenda. Brenda says, it's weird for me to call her Brenda. I just want to call her Mom. Mom says,
hi, Brenda.
The word kindness is so important. It is incredibly difficult for people who have never had experience with addiction or mental illness to understand what is happening for people. She goes on, say, in Chief Hackl's opinion, how do we incorporate people with lived experience in these discussions with decision makers? And maybe not only with decision makers, but how can we incorporate people with lived experience into your engagement strategy with the unhoused?
That's really good thoughts. Yeah, so of course this work that we've tried to do to better understand is talking with those with lived experience. Time spent with community-based organizations with their staff who have lived experience.
Mm-hmm.
PHR, sponsored today.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
Shout out
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Communications is important, man.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and they have many people that have lived experience there. So all our dialogue with them, myself talking with those that are, say, around Prairie Harm, around the Lighthouse, at Salvation Army, wherever it may be. That's lived experience. But we need to take it a step further. And I know at Fire, like, we're on this journey in terms of our strategic plan. We just released here in 2023. And one of the things we're committed to is an advisory committee. And that advisory committee will see a diverse group that will be part of this that are not SFD employees.
Mm.
And part of that will be people with lived experience.
Mm.
We need to have that.
I would encourage you to talk to my wife, Donna. She spent 18 months on the streets.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. We got one more comment here from Carm. Let's see. Get her up on screen. Carm says, Chief, due to the number of people on the street, the extreme weather strategy needs to be activated sooner than minus 30 degrees Celsius. What would it take to have a greater humanity at the core of a strategy?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so we have this temperature set up in terms of extreme weather as minus 30 or plus 30 in the summer months.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that number actually mean?
Cold or hot?
Cold or
like
hot.
Real cold.
But,
yeah,
of course, when it's winter conditions and not minus 30, people are still freezing extremities,
mm-hmm.
All kinds of health issues outside. So to adjust that, to engage the strategy more days of the year based on a different benchmark for a temperature is going to take a much larger commitment
mm-hmm.
in terms of resources
mm-hmm.
and both human and financial.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we do need to adjust it.
Mm-hmm.
We have talked about it in the past as a community, and there has been reporting to committee and council about that. But it is going to take some more focused dialogue, that's for sure, to change that, because it will take more resources and more dollars, 100%. But we do need to adjust it.
Are you properly resourced right now for the work that you're doing, or is a lot of this happening off the side of your desk?
Oh boy, but a week before budget here.
Let's go. Let's go.
Well, SFD needs to be involved in this work.
Mm-hmm.
It is our work.
Mm-hmm. Sounds very diplomatic.
Yeah,
to say.
It's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming. Our service has changed so much. I'm going to get to the end answer.
Okay.
But overdoses, if I look at some different areas of our business, overdoses in 2020 increased by 90%. From 2019 to 2023, we're almost 4 times the amount of overdoses. We're at over 1,100 overdose calls we go to this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's just one piece of our business. That's an example. Our requirement for emergency management to be leading or supporting, coordinating is the better word.
Mm-hmm.
Things like extreme weather, cold and hot weather, things related to the vulnerable sector.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of during the pandemic, we had a big committee set up. That work is ever increasing. Our community risk reduction work with our encampment work is going to double this year.
Mm-hmm.
Our business is growing faster
mm-hmm.
than the resources we have.
Mm.
How about I answer it that way?
Okay.
Days before budget.
Okay.
We
So your budget request will reflect these needs?
Well, we do have some requests in the budget related to new fire stations in the future based on all our medical response, which has continued to really increase.
Mm-hmm.
We do have some increases around our some managers to support our business, and but we have much work to do, and we'd like to better achieve our service levels.
PC right there. Well done. Before we cap it, I'm interested to know, now you talked a lot about relationships, you talked a lot about humanity and dignity. What are some of the impacts that you're seeing on your first responders having to deal with these challenges on such an ongoing basis?
For sure. This is a real challenge for us. So if I think of our fire paramedics, all our fire staff that respond to medical calls, which is all of our staff, not just our fire paramedics, with the way the overdoses have increased, with 75% of our code red calls, that's our lights and sirens calls, 75% are medical calls. 75. It's an impact on our frontline staff for sure. What they are seeing on the street today has changed. It is harder on them because of their repetition. They're human beings. They interact with some of these people over and over, and it's not that they are mad at the person. They're not. They're upset that this is happening. Of course, this weighs on them.
Yeah.
And so with that, there are challenges around well-being, around our staff feeling strong mentally. I know our proactive work around encampments, the staff that we have dedicated there, they do incredible work as well. It's hard on them. They want to have success, and so they don't have success every day. And so with that, we're trying to keep watch on that. We're trying to continue to work with our union that these staff belong to, the International Association of Firefighters, that do incredible work. But it's a challenge for sure.
Are those challenges, are those needs being met? Are they properly resourced? You want to?
Yeah. Well, so, we have received funding in the past to support wellness, and what we try to, through budget, what we try to do is we try to balance, but most of our initiatives, we partner with the union in terms of our wellness supports and in terms of programming. And so, but we can always do more. We can always do more. We're providing more safety training for our staff that are doing this proactive work. So those are all things that we're balancing amongst everything else that we have in terms of all the responses we have to the public. Yeah.
Okay. Let's cap it. Thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks for bringing your expertise to the conversation. I hope we can continue this conversation with your organization in the future. And that's it for now.
Thanks so much for having me today, Daniel.
All right, if you got something out of today's episode, please hit that like button at the bottom of the screen. If you are not yet subscribed to Hard Knocks Talks on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications. We go live every Friday morning. We go live every Sunday night. We have lots of content to catch up on, so we can keep you busy. That's it for now. Thanks so much. Take care.
Say, this is Hard